Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let's get straight into it. We've had some huge news overnight regarding none other than Bryan Mbeumo to go to finally, and then loads of other actual decent stories to go through rather than talking about nonsense as it's been over the last couple of days, in my opinion. So let's get straight into it. Let's kick off with Bryan Mbeumo. So Manchester United have now improved their offer for Bryan Mbeumo to over £60 million. Talks have accelerated in the past few days and will continue this week. Now that came from Ben Jacobs, who has been very credible and very reliable recently, and pretty much on the money when it comes specifically to the Bryan Mbeumo news. So was the first reports that I seen breaking the story about a second improved bid for Bryan Mbeumo. Then since then we've had Nave So, it was a good source, saying that Manchester United have submitted a second bid tonight for Bryan Mbeumo. Total package in excess of £60 million. United are keen to wrap up deal and have him ready for the start of pre-season. Sully talks, good source. Man United are set to submit a second bid for Bryan Mbeumo in the region of £60 million. Mbeumo has always wanted United and has been pushing for the move for weeks. Simon Stone, good source, saying the same thing, submitted an improved bid, more than £60 million for Mbeumo. We're trying to get, United are trying to get Ruben Amorim's squad sorted for the start of pre-season training on July the 7th. So it seems like there's been some movement or something that's happened, maybe a bit of a rocket up the backside to try and get some deals done and finally get these things sorted in time for pre-season, which is July the 7th. Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic, same thing. Manchester United submit improved bid to Brentford for Bryan Mbeumo, more than £60 million in total. Talks have been ongoing. Manchester United hope for resolution in the near future. Graham Bailey, exactly the same thing. So you've got Graham Bailey, Laurie Whitwell, Simon Stone, Ben Jacobs. I've probably missed one out because there's been an absolute explosion of journalists all coming out with the same thing, that Man United have made a bid in excess of £60 million. We don't know the exact figure or anything yet, but remember the belief was that when we make a second bid, we're only going to make a second bid if we're confident that it would be accepted by Brentford or be closer to what they're maybe looking for. Apparently they want a bigger sum of money up front as well. So maybe we've just been working on the structure of the payment that's going to suit both parties as well, because we don't obviously want to pay too much up front. Or as an initial, if we want to structure it over 5 years maybe to help us with PSR. And maybe that's what we've been negotiating, but it looks like finally there's going to be some movement. And then Fabrizio Romano also confirming the story as well. So Manchester United have submitted an improved offer to Brentford totaling in excess of £60 million for Bryan Mbeumo. So an explosion of journalists, all the credible ones as well, all the big hitters, Romano, Laurie Whitwell, two of the best in my opinion. Simon Stone's really good. All saying this. Ben Jacobs has been spot on this transfer window so far as well. All saying second bid has been submitted, over £60 million. At the time of recording this video, we do not know whether this bid has been accepted by Brentford or whether it's going to be rejected, and we'll maybe have to haggle for like a couple of £1 million more. It just depends on because everyone's saying in excess of £60 million. The belief is that Brentford want Cunha money, which is £62.5 million. So if we've offered close to that, then hopefully it would get accepted. But we need to wait and see how it plays out. But finally, after 3 weeks of pretty much nothing with Mbeumo, apart from nonsense stories about Tottenham trying to hijack the deal and stuff, finally we've got some more movement regarding that deal. So hopefully we'll get it sorted, in the next few days. But according to the reports, we want to get it sorted as soon as, well, definitely before pre-season starts, which is on the 7th. So that seems to be a bit of at least we've got a deadline now to get this deal done and dusted by. The latest then coming out after all that noise was from James Ducker in the Telegraph, saying that Manchester United's second bid for Bryan Mbeumo is expected to guarantee Brentford more money up front. So I think that's what they've been negotiating. Brentford want more money up front as an upfront payment. We maybe want to structure the deal better as well, and it's just about compromising in the middle around a deal that suits both parties. But hopefully we'll get some more updates regarding whether this bid has been accepted, whether it's been rejected, but the belief has always been that if or when we make a second bid, we want to be confident that it's going to be agreed. But whether it does or not, we'll have to completely wait and see how that develops. But give us your thoughts and feelings. What are you thinking? I'm optimistic. Second bid. We've been negotiating for weeks. We've been in constant contacts. The player wants to come. I think it's just hopefully a matter of time before we get this deal done, which is still frustrating, but at least there's been some movement regarding the deal rather than, because there's not really been much going on with the Mbeumo deal. Let's be truthful. In the last few weeks, it's just been pretty much the same stories regurgitating, and like I said, a couple of nonsense stories regarding Tottenham making a bid, which got dismissed. And but yeah, finally some movement. But give us your thoughts and feelings on Bryan Mbeumo in the comments. Now, I'm really excited about the player as well. I don't think it could be underestimated how good I think Mbeumo is, and when you add him to Cunha, how different our attack is going to look next season. I thought Patrice Evra summed it up really well around the potential signing, where he said the question isn't what happens to Ahmad when Mbeumo arrives. The real question is what happens to defenders when both are lighting up that right flank. One brings chaos and the other brings finesse. Defenders should be worried. And I really like that from Patrice Evra. And, if we are to believe that we're going to be playing Ahmad at right wing back, where I think he's been really good. I think he's better there than he has been under the 10 under Ruben Amorim, and then Bryan Mbeumo as that inside right. That's going to be a massive upgrade from what we've been witnessing over the last few years anyway. Hopefully, as long as Mbeumo settles in, but he's a low risk of signing as you can make. Good age, Premier League experience, been in the league for multiple years. 20 goals last season as well. Like, he knows, it's about as low risk a signing as you can get. Obviously, we don't know until a player puts on a Man United shirt whether they're going to make it or not. But, I'm excited by the Bryan Mbeumo news. And I agree with Patrice Evra as well. Let's look at the positives rather than, where's everyone going to fit? Well, okay, how the opposition's going to feel when we're lining up with Mbeumo and Ahmad down that side, because I think that is a combination that's going to be very, very dangerous. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Now, sticking with Mbeumo, Ben Jacobs said that Manchester United's plan is to try and get Bryan Mbeumo done before pre-season begins on July the 7th, and Mbeumo remains firm in his preference to join. Simon Stone said the similar thing as well, that United are trying to get Ruben Amorim's squad sorted for the start of pre-season on July the 7th. And then Rob Dawson, similar thing as well, that United are confident they can reach an agreement with Brentford on Mbeumo's valuation and payment structure to add him to Amorim's squad before the pre-season tour of the United States. So loads more credibility. Simon Stones, Rob Dawson, Ben Jacobs, all saying the same thing, that we want to get this deal done before pre-season because we want to try to, at least to set Ruben Amorim up for success by getting two major signings in. If you get Mbeumo and Cunha in before pre-season, yes, we still need a striker. Gives us still time, though, potentially to get a striker. Not necessarily in for the 7th, because I don't think there's any way we're going to do a deal in 2 weeks, considering the length of time it's taken us, because we are still slow at doing the deals. We're still very slow at doing the negotiations and stuff. So I don't think anything's actually changed there from Ineos. I think we've been quicker in doing them, so because we're doing them early, so we're doing them in June. Like, if you get Cunha in and Mbeumo in June, that's massively impressive. But the 3-week negotiations are still there, and you've got to look at the common denominator for that. What's the common denominator with us being slow at negotiations? And it's the Glazers. They're the one there because they're ultimately still in charge of the club, and they have to sign off transfer deals. And is that what's causing the delay? Because everything we're doing and we want to do quickly is just all having to filter through to the Glazers, and they're like taking their time over discussing what to do and deciding what to do. Who knows? But it would history would suggest that that's correct, because we've got rid of everybody else that was normally involved in these deals and got new people in, and the only people that are still there, are the Glazer family. But who knows? But it is frustrating that we're still taking our time to do these deals, but we are doing them quick, like earlier in the transfer window, which is a positive for me. But give us your thoughts and feelings on Mbeumo. What were you thinking? You excited? Are you okay with the price? Give us your thoughts and feelings on all of that. I'm just going to check the news actually before we move on to the other story to make sure nothing else is breaking. on Bryan Mbeumo because it's very, very hot at the moment. No, nothing else at the time of recording this video. So let's move on to the other transfer stories then. So Fabrizio Romano is saying once Mbeumo's done, that Manchester United's top priority is still Bryan Mbeumo and signing a new number 9. So we've known that for a while anyway, though, that once we get Mbeumo done, the priority position from there is going to be a number 9, and then I think the rest of the transfer window we will maybe rely on the sales and the exits, and then maybe strengthen midfield, goalkeeper, wing back, whichever other position we can strengthen in that period as well. So we need to keep an eye because there's names that we are linked with for the striker. I would say the heavily one is Gyökeres. Just behind that, I would say, was Ekitike, but then we had loads of noise yesterday around like Keane and Muani and all these other strikers that don't necessarily fill me with much confidence. So it'll be interesting to see, actually, once we get Mbeumo done, who we do pivot to, because I think that'll be the tell. I think United will then go strong on their striker target after the Mbeumo deal is done, because we'll know where we are financially. And then if we get some exits done as well, maybe we'll see a little bit more. Maybe some other clubs, when it gets to July, will start making their transfer dealings as well, because no other club really, outside of, City and Liverpool, really making that many signings neither as well, because I think they're all waiting for the new financial year from a PSR perspective. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on who we actually pivot towards for the striker. Now, one option that I brought you in last night's video was Christopher Nkunku. So Manchester United and Chelsea are considering a deal that would see Christopher Nkunku and Alejandro Garnacho move in opposite directions. Direct talks between the clubs have not yet taken place. So that came from Matt Lawson, who's actually a good source of information as well, specifically for Chelsea, suggesting I've put swap deal on there. It's not a swap deal. That's not what he was talking about. It'll be, advertised as a swap deal, but it's effectively we buy Nkunku and they buy Garnacho, and it's two separate transactions. Swap deals don't happen in football. We don't know. There's no player trades because it doesn't help anyone from FFP or PSR perspective. But that's a really good source suggesting that actually would maybe, considering a deal for Nkunku, and Chelsea might be interested in Garnacho, but Chelsea are very, very heavily invested on Jamie Gittins at the moment. But then I wouldn't put it past them to still sign players beyond that, to be fair. So that makes no difference to Chelsea. If they're interested in a player, they'll still sign 5 other players in that same position as well, because that's what they seem to be doing. But then also Fabrizio Romano has said that Manchester United are aware that Christopher Nkunku is available this summer, and Chelsea are aware of Alejandro Garnacho's situation. However, there are no club-to-club contacts and no personal terms have been agreed at this stage. So Romano is basically saying that actually, yes, United are aware of Christopher Nkunku's situation. Chelsea are aware of Garnacho's situation, but at the moment, there's nothing more than that. Maybe just inquiries. It could be plausible, I suppose, but nothing advanced or anything at this stage. Now, the Muppeteers said there are 0 chances that Manchester United swap Alejandro Garnacho for Christopher Nkunku. I would agree. All Muppeteers also said, though, that Manchester United are interested in Christopher Nkunku, but only on a loan with an option to buy. So the Muppeteers was suggesting that if we were to pursue a deal for Nkunku, we don't want to necessarily do it on permanent. It might be a loan with an option to buy, in a way to then get Chelsea, or release some funds for Chelsea to buy Garnacho as like some sort of PSR shenanigans to help them out in order to facilitate Garnacho's exit. So that couldn't be ruled out as a possibility. Now, the Daily Mail, so this is Kieran Gill, who's very good when it comes to Chelsea news, saying that Christopher Nkunku is not seen as a priority for Manchester United currently, but rather a option. So, there's no smoke without fire when it comes to this situation. Now, in terms of Garnacho, Laurie Whitwell has suggested that Alejandro Garnacho would like to remain in the Premier League and favours London as a destination. Chelsea hold an interest, and a price of £70 million has been communicated to suitors. What do we think about that? So just to summarise, in my opinion, I think we've maybe made contact with Christopher Nkunku's agent just as a option, like we have done with Ekitike, like we have done with plenty of other. We probably looked at or spoken to Eze and Semenyo. There's probably a ton of players that we're lining up or speaking to, at least anyway, just to understand the cost, the salary, the likelihood of a deal, because you have to understand if a player would want to come to you first before you pursue any any further conversation around that specific player, and you'd want to understand the cost and the wages and stuff. And I think United maybe have reached out to Christopher Nkunku to understand the deal and the maybe even Chelsea for the price, but I don't think it's any more than that. Laurie Whitwell saying that Alejandro Garnacho might want to go to Chelsea. That's cool. As long as we get the maximum amount of the money, we should no longer have our eyes pulled down by our pants pulled down and our asses spanked by Chelsea, because that always happens with transfers between us and them, or between them just stealing our transfers as well. It's about time we got a W when it came to a transfer with Chelsea. So that means 70 million plus loads of add-ons. Thank you very much. In my opinion, for Garnacho, because they are literally they're so annoying in the transfer window, because they steal all our transfers and then sell us all their duds. And it is what it is when it comes to that. So, but maybe that's a plausible. I don't think it would be a swap. Swaps don't happen in football, but maybe Chelsea do go for Garnacho, and then as part of that, we take Nkunku off of their wage bill to give them wiggle room from PSR to afford Garnacho. That might be some sort of shenanigans we might do in order to facilitate that, but we'll keep an eye on it for you. Give us your thoughts. I know what you're going to say about Nkunku. The massive red flag is his injury history. Although this season he's not been injured that much, but he's not really played that much either. So, but it's a massive red flag for me signing another injury-prone player from Chelsea. We've been down that road before. We're all hurt by the Mason Mount deal and the fact that it's been terrible. Let's be real. And that's a massive red flag for me for Nkunku. But if it helps get rid of Garnacho for a higher price, maybe it's one of these that we might look into doing. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now, that's not the only swap deal that's been being mentioned. I did bring you this news the other day, but there was some more details that I haven't had time to run through with you yet. So Juventus are interested in a move for Manchester United's Jadon Sancho and are willing to offer players in a move for Sancho. The player would be interested in a move to Turin, and Manchester United seem more open to a flexible idea of a transfer. A transfer for him could also involve two players, Dusan Vlahovic and Douglas Luiz. The Serbian has rejected approaches from Turkey and Saudi Arabia in the hope of moving to European giant, and the Brazilian also having attracted interest from the Red Devils in January. Now, that was the same reporter that suggested the other day, but good Italian journalist, fairly decent, that was saying that Man United and Juventus had been held a meeting and there were three players discussed, and they were the three players discussed. So it's come out now since that maybe they were looking at some kind of deal that involves Sancho going to Juventus, and then maybe us doing a deal for either Luiz or Vlahovic as part of that. Again, I put it down as a swap deal. Swap deals do not happen in football. It's two different transactions, but they buy, Sancho for 20 million, and then we buy Luiz for 30 million, and then we only have spent 10 million pounds on that deal, and they've made 10 million pounds in profit, like that sort of thing when it comes to swap deals. But that will be really interesting to see what happens. I think the Vlahovic stories at the moment are coming more from his agent, and he's being basically pawned around Europe trying to get a deal. He wants, obviously, 200 grand a week, according to the recent reports as well. But Luiz is a really interesting one because there's been loads of credibility. Like Romano's linked us with Luiz, and he linked us with a similar deal as well before, where it was some kind of Sancho to Juventus, Luiz to United, whether it was a double loan, wasn't it? I think it was like some sort of double loan deal that we've been linked with as well. So there's no smoke without fire when it comes to this. That could be plausible, but I think a lot of it will come down to Sancho, where he wants to go, and what sort of wage structure Juventus offer him, because we know that he's not necessarily prepared to take a pay cut at this moment in time. That's the hold up with the deal with him going to Napoli. Is still interest from Fenerbahce though as well, but we'll need to keep an eye on that and see how it plays out. But another interesting option. It's about time we got smart with some deals in the transfer window as well, whether we start looking at these sort of things where we're like, okay, well, we've got a player we want to get rid of. Can we do a cash deal where they buy a player and then we take one of their players as well? Because like I said, it would only be like a small transaction for United. It's not direct swaps don't happen, but it's about time we got a bit of creative in the transfer market as well, I think. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Let's move with some other news. So Manchester United could turn to Marco Carnesecchi as an option in goal this summer, but are also looking at Aston Villa's Emi Martinez in case Andre Onana leaves. Now, that came from Alfredo Padula, who's you know, at one point in time, very, very good source. So definitely one to pay attention to. A little bit hit and miss recently, but is decent. Interestingly, at the time of recording this video, I've not made a slide for it because I've just seen it come out, that Laurie Whitwell, speaking about Emi Martinez, has said that Manchester United have been in touch with Emi Martinez's representative since the start of the year. Martinez knows that any pursuit depends on Andre Onana's future and prefers a move to United or Europe over Saudi Arabia. So Laurie Whitwell, who in my opinion is one of the most credible United journalists around, suggesting that we have been in touch with his representatives as well. But again, whether that's interest that we're going to follow through or not would depend on Onana going. But Carnesecchi might be one that we look at if Onana stays, to bring in as a backup goalkeeper, because his name's being linked a lot, being banded around, mainly from Italian journalists. So I would still like to see a little bit more credibility, but it seems to be a name that's you know, doing the rounds, no smoke without fire regarding that situation. So maybe they are looking at something like that, that if their Bayenda goes, maybe we look at Carnesecchi as the younger second choice goalkeeper that ready to compete with Onana. But then if Onana goes, maybe we're looking at Martinez, and then we could end up in a position where we've got Martinez and Carnesecchi as your first and second choice goalkeepers, which I wouldn't necessarily be against neither as well. But we need to see how that plays out. But we'll keep an eye on it. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now let's go through the Casemiro news. So Al Nassr are close to signing Casemiro. Negotiations are at an advanced stage. Now that came out from what's believed to be a fairly decent Saudi Arabian source and journalist. I have no idea around the credibility regarding that. So I was ready to say, well, let's take that with a pinch of salt. But Nico, who's a very credible journalist, has come out saying that Casemiro has received a rich bid from a Saudi club. He could leave Manchester United in the summer transfer window. So that's really interesting, because the original story I was ready to say, as I mentioned, take it with a pinch of salt, because I don't know the credibility of the source, and we'll wait and see if there's any more credibility regarding it. But Nico's actually been really good recently as a journalist, very good in the January transfer window regarding the Garnacho and situation. So one to pay attention to, suggesting a similar thing. Didn't name the club, but 2 and 2 would you know, maybe suggest that if that story is to be believed, and Al Nassr might be interested in Casemiro. Yeah, that would be massive for us, actually, because to get his wages off the books, and whether he'll want to go though or not, that's the problem with Casemiro. He's on big wages at United. He's only got a year left on his contract. Is he going to want to stay and ride that out? We've come up with loads of stories around him wanting to stay and happy in Manchester as well. So we'll need to wait and see how that goes. But that would be huge, huge, huge from a PSR perspective to get Casemiro's wages off the books. And then obviously we would definitely need to bring in a midfielder then if Casemiro goes. So that's really interesting and worth paying attention to. So we'll see how that plays out over the next few weeks and months. And finally, let's go for Rasmus Hojlund. So Inter Milan are still in negotiations with Rasmus Hojlund, and Manchester United. Inter have not yet made an official offer. Not yet made an official offer, as United's financial demands are still too high. So that came from Fabrizio Romano, suggesting that United and Inter are still in negotiations, but we're still asking for, you know, the 40-odd million euros or 40-odd million pounds fee that we need from a PSR perspective. Charlotte Ducker said, I think there's a hope that maybe Manchester United can polish Rasmus Hojlund over the summer, and that we are going to see a Hojlund 2.0 next season. So Charlotte Ducker suggesting that maybe the hope is that we can train him or do something with him to become a better player. I have worries about that. I think for me, it's a confidence thing, but whether you can build his confidence up over the preseason and with better players around him, maybe. But then Charlotte Ducker did also go on to say, from what I've seen of him live, I'm not too sure about that. I'm not sure if this level is just a bit too much for him. So he's definitely going to be an interesting one. But whether or not he stays or goes, they still need someone else. And I would agree with that as well. We definitely need to bring in, I think, somebody more proven or a better quality of striker up front. And then if Rasmus does stay, he becomes a backup and he's got someone to learn off of, and maybe that does better for his confidence. But then if not, if you sell him, you've got Chido, Xerxes, Cunha, and Mbeumo that can all play in that striker position. So I don't necessarily see us going for two strikers with the flexibility we would have with other players, but we'd need to keep an eye on that one. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.